Hello, students. How you doing today? Today we're going to move away from the Bill of Rights and U.S. government. We're going to move into Westward Expansion. So I'm going to get into it, and we're going to get motoring as quickly as possible. So bear with me. I'm going to show you my screen here. And hopefully you guys can see that. So today's lesson is going to be on Westward Expansion. This is the first part of the video. And I thought this was kind of interesting, so I'm going to show you guys this little bit of a graphic that kind of goes through. It's an interactive graphic that shows the population and how it grows in the United States between 1790 and 1890. So for about 100 years, this is what America looked like. So 1790 is right when we become a country. It's our new constitution. We become a country in 1783, really 1776 when we declare independence from Great Britain. But the Constitutional Convention, 1787, it's ratified by 1789. That's when Washington's going to take office, and he's elected and then takes office. So we're looking at our new nation, 1790. We can kind of see the population density is really mainly located over here on the East Coast. If we add the cities in, you can kind of see the major cities where the highest concentration of people are. And as we move forward, you can see by the 1800s, by 1810, you can see the movement of people west. And by 1890, this is what America looks like. You can see the major cities out west. You have Salt Lake City, Denver, Seattle, San Francisco, Los Angeles. Down here in Texas, you have Dallas and Houston. So these are all going to be major cities throughout our Westward Expansion unit. So going back to our presentation, let's talk about the goals for this week. So the goals for this week is we want to identify territories that have been added to the United States between 1776, when we declared our independence, through 1860, which is the start of the American Civil War. We want to create a timeline infographic of the land that we added to the United States. That's what you guys are going to do on Tuesday. Wednesday and Thursday, you guys are going to connect Westward Expansion to slavery, and then be able to connect slavery to kind of the causes of the Civil War. And so today we're going to watch this video that you're already watching. You're going to complete this assignment. It's located in Canvas. It's called, it looks like this. So as we go through this video today, I want you to complete this document. So you'll find this is a Google drawing. It's going to be located inside your Canvas folder in the announcements for today, for this week. The announcement is going to be labeled 427 through 5-1 Virtual Learning, Westward Expansion. And the assignment is entitled 427 Virtual Learning, Westward Expansion, Video and Student Worksheets. So when you find this video, right, or this worksheet right here, that's what you need to have out while we go through this video. So quickly grab that and pause the video, and when you return, we'll get going. All right, well, welcome back, and let's talk about what you're going to do once you get this document. So what you're going to do is you are going to drag down here the red text boxes, and you're going to put them into the correct boxes that correspond up here. Okay. So let's kind of go back. Let's recap really quickly. Let's start at the very beginning, when the British first arrived in the New World, their first successful colony, 1607. This is kind of what the colonies look like between the years 1607 and 1763. We're just this little tiny yellow eastern coast of the United States right here, or excuse me, of America. And remember, we're British at this time, so these are the British 13 colonies. And as we move on, remember that we're not, the British are not the only ones that are in the New World at this time, or in North America. The French are making claims. They've gone up the Mississippi River and down the St. Lawrence River, and they're claiming this area right here, which is kind of the Ohio Valley right there, the Ohio River, and the Mississippi River Valley. So you have the British over here along the East Coast. You have the French in the middle of the country who are making their claims. And then down here you have the Spanish who are claiming Florida, modern day Florida. So as we move on, I know we already talked about the French and Indian War, but remember, as we look at this, this graphic right here, the little tan area between the yellow and the green is going to be disputed area between the British and the French, and that's going to spark the French and Indian War that's going to start in 1754. So that war is going to last until 1763, and when the war ends, the landscape of America is going to change. The British are no longer going to have a foothold in North America, or at least in what's the modern day United States. They'll have still a little area that's down in Haiti, but they're going to be kicked out as of 1763, primarily of North America. So, and we see that the Spanish are going to claim this land over here. So when the Treaty of Paris came around, the British, they're going to gain all of this land that was once French land. They're going to gain this Florida, which was Spanish. And then the Spanish are going to move over and claim west of the Mississippi River. So what that treaty meant for Britain was really a whole lot of land. That's what Britain gets out of this treaty and out of this war. But remember, they are broke by the end of this war. So what did that treaty mean to the Americans? Well, quite honestly, that treaty didn't mean much to the Americans. They, thought, well, right after the war, we have all this land. We're going to cross the mountains and we're going to settle that land. But the reality is, King George said, not so fast, and he draws the line on the top of the Appalachian Mountains, which becomes known as the Proclamation of 1763. So, as we move forward, the Proclamation of 1763, the king expected the Native Americans to stay on the western side of the Appalachian Mountains and the Americans to stay on the eastern side. And in fact, he had a little bit of Indian reservation land set aside on the other side of the mountains from the Native Americans. So a real quick fast forward, we already went through this, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, but after the French and Indian War, obviously we know that we took this road to revolution. The king is taxing us, colonists are angry, you're taxing us without representation. We have a massacre, we have a tea party, we have the king punishing the colonists for the tea party, and next that moves towards shots fired at Lexington and Concord, a battle at Bunker Hill, a Declaration of Independence where we break up with the king, and then we fight this war for independence that's going to last all the way through 1783. And throughout the war, we're going to experience unbelievable pain, quite a lot of victory. Not quite a lot of victory. We're going to experience some victory, probably a lot more pain. So we win Boston, we lose New York, we win at Saratoga. That win at Saratoga gets us help from the French. We experience this horrible winter in Valley Forge, and throughout the entire war, the Americans are short of money, soldiers, weapons, food, shoes, blankets, you name it, we don't have it. And but at the very end, we are able to defeat the British at the Battle of Yorktown, and we move towards the Treaty of Paris. Now, I don't want you to be confused. I think you're thinking, well, we just talked about this Treaty of Paris. No, we talked about the Treaty of Paris that ended the French and Indian War, which happened in 1763. We have a second Treaty of Paris in 1783, and that treaty in Paris ended the American Revolution in 1783. So let's talk about the Treaty of Paris really quick in 1783 and see how that really kind of changed the landscape of America. As you can see, this new land, the new land in America, we have all of this green area. So we have now the first 13 states of America, and then we have all of this green right here, which is territory. And the British are pretty much relegated to Canada by this point. That's where their land's going to be. It's going to be up in Canada. So as we move forward, just kind of give you just a real quick recap of the land acquisitions. This was the 13 colonies right here. This was what the British looked like after the Treaty of Paris and the French and Indian War. And then this is what America looked like after the Second Treaty of Paris, which is 1783. And you can see the British claims are up in Canada, and the green represents the new America, which stretches all the way from the Atlantic Ocean to the to the Mississippi River. So fast forward to the Louisiana Purchase. We are now a country, we're really young in our country. We've had 2 terms of President Washington, 1 term of President John Adams, and 1803 comes around, and we are now into a new term with President Thomas Jefferson. So when Jefferson becomes president in 1803, this is what America looked like. We had added a couple new states. We had Kentucky, we had Tennessee. By the time 1803 rolls around, Ohio has become a state. So we have added some territory. Vermont's become a state. And let's just kind of go through each one of these one by one so we can get a better look at what each one of these pieces of land that we purchased. So Louisiana we get for 1803, in 1803, and it cost us a total of $15 million. Now we buy that from the French, and the French, they're no longer interested in this region. They had just recently gotten the land back from the Spanish. So Louisiana, the French had actually given up Louisiana to the Spanish after the French and Indian War. But there was a connection between relatives that were in the French Empire and the Spanish Empire, and France was able to get this land back. And their goal for this land when they got it back from the Spanish was to feed their slaves that were in Haiti. The French had very successful sugar plantations in Haiti, which is an island nation kind of down there in the Gulf of Mexico. And there was a slave rebellion, and the French had lost this territory of Haiti. And since they lost that territory of Haiti, they had no need for Louisiana because they were going to use that land to feed the French slaves that were in Haiti. So at this time too, there's a conflict between the French and the British, and fearing losing this land of Louisiana to the British without getting anything from it, Napoleon, the French leader at this time, decides, well, I'm going to go ahead and sell this land to the United States for $15 million. So let's recap really what the problem is. The United States, what we really want is if you notice this black line right here that separates the yellow territory from the original United States, what we want is free access to this Mississippi River, because that line represents the Mississippi River. And we want to be able to ship our goods freely down the Mississippi River so we can get them to an ocean port down here in New Orleans. And so, like I said before, France has no need for Louisiana because of the slave revolt. And so they decide that they are going to sell it to the United States. Now, we pay $15 million for it. Part of that money goes to France, and the remainder of that money went to pay for American residents who had made claims against the French for damages by the French when they were in charge of that land. So, but total cost for the Americans was $15 million. It was a huge land grab for a very, very, very small price. So if you guys remember, you guys did this last year. I know you guys studied Lewis and Clark, you know, and they're the ones that are going to go out to the West Coast. They're going to head out to the Pacific Ocean, and they're told, or they're asked by President Jefferson, we want you to go out there and we want you to look for, make friends with Native American tribes out there, see what really kind of America has purchased in this Louisiana territory. They really wanted to find an easy route to get to the Pacific Ocean. So they follow the Missouri River, they meet up with the Mandan Indian, the Sioux. Remember, Sacagawea is going to be married off to the crew, and so this takes a couple years for Lewis and Clark to get out to the Pacific and back. But what they did is they really set up a great opportunity for Americans. They brought back their story of adventure. They brought back their story of Native Americans and plants and wildlife and opportunity that exists out west. And so that's really going to encourage a lot of people to start heading out west and exploring Louisiana in the following their expedition. The next area of land that we want to talk about is down here in Florida. And remember, at this time, we have the original United States is in gray here. We have the Louisiana Territory in yellow. And down here in blue, we have Florida. So we're going to get Florida from Spain. It's going to be kind of a messy story. So the story goes kind of like this. Problem with Florida, Spain didn't really take very good care of it. And they had a lot of slaves that were running away from Georgia, which was part of the United States at this time. And they were finding safety among the Indian tribes down in Florida, the Seminole Indians. And so another problem that they were having is the Seminole Indians would sneak up into Georgia, and they would light plantations on fire and just really create quite a bit of havoc. So while this was going on between the Spanish Floridians, the Native Americans, and America, the Americans decided to send Andrew Jackson down to the border of Florida and Georgia. And his goal, or his mission, was to really just protect the border, but he didn't follow those directions, and he went into Florida and he captured a bunch of major cities. And after he had captured those major cities, he had asked, or excuse me, the Americans told the Spanish, look, we're going to give you two choices. You can govern Spanish Florida and govern it well, or you can get out and we'll pretty much just unleash General Jackson again. And so Spain at this time, they decide it's probably just better off to get rid of Florida if they can make sure that there is a clear and defined border between Spain and North America, or the Americans at this point. So really, the Americans, we get Florida, we define the Spanish-American border, and Spain's going to give up claims to this blue territory up here called Oregon. Moving ahead from 1819 to 1845, in 1845, we're going to add another huge piece of land called Texas. And we're going to add that land after Texas gains their independence from Mexico. and they're their own country. Texas is its own country for about 10 years. It's called the Lone Star Republic, and they're going to exist as their pretty much their own country at that time. So to give you kind of a quick headline or a background of Texas timeline, 1521, going way back, well before the English were settling along the east coast of the United States, or of the east coast of America. We had the Spanish claiming Mexico. And at that time, they actually had a claim on Texas in 1521. So Mexico, 300 years later, they're going to gain their independence from Spain. Now, remember, if we go back and think about this, 1819 was the year that we kind of kicked the Spanish out of Florida. 2 years later, Spain's going to lose control of Mexico. Mexico is going to rebel. The rebellion is going to last, I think it's going to last about 10 years. I'm not 100% on that, but I think it's about 10 years. And then Texas is going to be really run by, they're going to create their own government. And so in 1821, the Americans, there's American Moses Austin, and he wants to go down to Texas to start he's an American, he wants to start a cotton colony. And he asks Spain, he says, hey, can I start a colony down there? And by the time he got down there, the colony had changed hands. It was now in control by Mexico. Mexico and Spain had banned slavery. And by 1836, this Texas colony led by Moses Austin, who had died on the way, his son Stephen Austin had taken over once he had gotten down there. And this new Texas, are these colonists from America that want to start a cotton colony in Texas. They head down there, and by 1836, there's going to be conflict between the Mexicans and Austin and his group of American colonists. And the conflict's going to it's going to swirl over numerous reasons. But one of the main reasons is the Mexicans were growing tired of the Americans, and slavery was an issue. The Mexicans didn't, they had banned slavery, yet the American colonists in Texas had slaves because they had cotton colonies, or excuse me, cotton plantations. And so 1836, Texas is going to have a war, and they're going to fight against Santa Anna and the Mexicans. And I don't know if you've ever heard the phrase, but remember, the Alamo comes from this fight at the Alamo in Texas between the Texans and the Mexicans. So Mexico wins that battle, and that little skirmish, and they gain their independence. And by 1836, we now have Texas as their own country. And so they're going to be their own country till 1845. And by 1845, the United States is going to recognize Texas as 1837, Texas is going to get recognized by the United States as a free republic. And then a few short years later, we're going to actually annex or kind of adopt or bring in Texas to the United States. So we'll talk more about that in the next video when we discuss slavery and how that kind of looked with regards to westward expansion. So by 1846, Texas is having disputes with the Mexican government over the boundaries, and it's going to spark a Mexican-American war. Because remember, by 1846, we've adopted or annexed Texas, and later that year, this border dispute sparks the war. So for 2 years, this war is going to rage on. It's going to be 1846 to 1848. And during this time of the war, we're actually going to create a treaty with the British. And what it's going to do is we are going to define the borders of this Oregon territory up here. This was a disputed region since 1819 with the Adams-Onis Treaty. Spain gave up any rights to this land up here in the Oregon Territory, but Britain had not. So we had been kind of governing this land and administering this land with Britain, kind of both countries working in this land together. But by 1846, we strike a deal with the British, and we cap off the northern border of the United States, the modern border of what it is today. So, like I said, during the during the Oregon Purchase, the treaty with Britain, we're at war with the Mexicans, and this war is going to end in 1848. And at the end of this war, we're going to purchase this, or we're going to get this land right here. It's going to cost us money, but we're purchasing that land, and we're also going to gain this little area in 1853, and this is going to round out what we call the lower 48. And the reason we purchased Gadsden because we wanted to finish our transcontinental railroad. They had some routes through this territory down here that would have made that very simple, and so therefore we purchased the land to make that happen for Mexico. So, quick recap: the United States at 1783. This is what we looked like at the end of the Revolutionary War. We had the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, bought from France for $15 million. We then acquire Florida from the Onis-Adams Treaty in 1819, when we had threatened them with governing or getting out of Florida. We annexed Texas after Texas had already earned their own freedom, and we went ahead and in 1836, Texas earned their own freedom. We adopted them or annexed them by 1845. And then we get the Oregon Territory. We get that through a treaty with the British, which settles the boundary disputes of the northern border of the contiguous or lower 48. And then finally, the Mexican War. No, not finally. The Mexican War ends. The Mexicans are going to give up or cede, which means to give up. They're going to give up this little Army Green territory over here on the left of America, the Southwest, the modern day Southwest. And then lastly, we get the Gadsden Purchase in 1853 for the railroads. So if we look at each one of these kind of a little bit closer, we'll notice that this is what America looked like in 1803. We'd already added Kentucky, we'd already added Tennessee, Vermont had been added. The Onis-Adams Treaty, again, I just want to recap quickly. It showed a clearly now defined border between the United States and the Spanish. And then tomorrow, you guys are going to watch a video or rewatch this video and complete another little learning assignment for the Westward Expansion infographic timeline. Okay, I threw a couple links here that are helpful on the end of the video as well. I would encourage you guys, I put the slideshow on Canvas, so I encourage you guys to go back and physically look at the slideshow, click on any links that you might have an opportunity to kind of expand your learning and learn a little bit more. So have a fantastic day, guys, and look for the second video on Wednesday.